Very.
Howdy.
So just real quick, Barry, I have an opportunity to actually have breakfast this morning. So at most, I'm going to go for about 90 minutes because we want to make it before the breakfast place closes.
Okay, not a problem. I doubt there's going to be a lot of people here today, being that it's Christmas Eve day.
Yeah, I thought I'd just keep it open just in case.
Yeah.
Usually I have more prepared thoughts on Sundays. Usually Saturdays I let go pretty freely.
Yeah. Well, and tomorrow is Christmas Day, so again, probably won't be a lot of people.
Probably not. People want to be opening up presents under the tree, I think.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not a big tree buying holiday season next celebrator.
Yeah, I think that the more you go from a concrete thinker to an abstract thinker, the less you rely on regular rituals as a reminder of the deep thing. And a lot of people, the rituals, they don't realize that the rituals are supposed to reify your abstract insights, and they don't have them to be reified. So the ritual is just the ritual, has no meaning essentially.
It's commercialized now. We know that.
Well, that's also 20th century American commercialism. But even before that, they still had, I mean, traditionally you always had rituals, which were supposed to walk you through some abstract concepts, theological concepts, or some kind of concepts. And most people, they go through the motions, going through the motions without really understanding that it's supposed to symbolize something that's more subtle, philosophical, abstract, or theological, or whatever.
Well, doesn't the Jewish tradition very much bake that into some of their celebrations? I mean, they have whole scripts and sequences of ideas.
The Passover meal is called a Seder, and Seder literally means order. And so you actually have a little booklet that you read the thing, and each item of food is symbolic of some aspect of the story. So by picking up the piece of food, saying a blessing over it, and eating it, you're reifying your understanding of that element of the story. So it's really a storytelling. It's a narrative where every element of the story actually has an abstract or important cultural, philosophical, theological meaning.
Yeah, I think I've only been through that level of detail once.
Most people don't really stop and ponder the deeper meaning of all the elements of the ritual. But yeah, the Passover Seder is probably the most structured, not the only one, but it's got the most complex. It's got script. It's got a Haggadah, which is really the script. And you go around the table, everybody reads a passage of it, and you go around in sequence, and that's supposed to,
what, an hour and a half, something like
easily. It depends. I mean, there are abbreviated Haggadahs and sort of the in-depth ones, depending on, how much you're into. The favorite blessing before the meals, rub-a-dub-dub, thanks for the grub. Yay, God, let's eat. So some people just want to have a very short mechanistic ritual, and they don't actually connect it to anything that's substantive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, my grandparents kept kosher, and they always had a big Passover Seder. And so, my brother and my cousin and I were always, we're the children at the table. And there's actually a special role for the youngest child. The youngest child asks the 4 questions. What's this all about? Why are we doing this? Why is this night so unusual? And then the rest of the Seder is actually answering the 4 questions. So the youngest child is the one who basically says, what's this all about? What's going on here? And eventually you do it every year, in your childhood, and pretty soon you begin to get, bit by bit what it's all really about.
It's a strong way to keep the oral history, the oral tradition alive.
Right. It's all about getting out of bondage, because, it's a story of basically getting out of bondage, which to this very day, you have wage slaves and all kinds of people who were sort of in some pseudo bondage state. And, how do you walk out of it? The answer is you get up and you walk out fundamentally. but it ain't that easy because the guy who's got you in bondage doesn't want to let you go.
Yep. Yep.
And then when you defeat the guy, you do not lord it over. You do not. There's also an element of no Schadenfreude. You don't take glee in the defeat of your enemy. That's also part of the sort of the lesson. So there are some very nice, sociological, philosophical, theological lessons baked into it.
Well, if it's been going for thousands of years, you would hope so. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it really goes back. I think the story dates from somewhere around 3,500 years ago, when this little tribe, meandered and set up a colony in what was then called Canaan. That was just a piece of land where Israel is today. So yeah, all of our culture, even our secular cultural stories, have kind of the same element. Uncle Sam and the 4th of July, trying to remember that we broke away from the King of England to have our own self-governance, and you go through this, whether it's a secular holiday, a political holiday, a religious holiday, a birthday, an anniversary. You sort of remember, what this passage in life was all about, or passage in the life of your ancestors.
Well, may I switch topics slightly?
Please switch them entirely if you like.
I would like to take this past week with a small glimmer of optimism.
This past week representing the stuff in Congress, or what stuff this past week?
Representing that the January 6th committee has 4 referrals on the X guy. And I'm hoping that actually gets taken forward and something really happens. Now, obviously, the way government works, we don't know who's really pulling strings.
It's very dicey. I mean, I was listening to a number of pundits trying to predict whether Garland or Jack Smith, who's really the guy who's been delegated the responsibility, will proceed with or without, the hint from Congress. I was surprised. The guy from BBC, who's sort of the most remote observer, thought that Garland would not proceed with an indictment because the difficulty of proving the case is actually pretty hard. And so this guy was predicting that Garland wouldn't proceed with an indictment, which I was kind of surprised to hear that. Of course, there's others in the United States, especially liberals, who are very eager to see the case move forward. And where I sit, I basically shrug because I don't really have any insight into politics.
Well, the problem with politics is you don't know who's really behind the scenes with money and pulling strings.
Yep.
On the face of it, the guy clearly has done a lot of bad stuff.
Oh yeah, so did Nixon. So did the Bushes.
Not nearly as much. Not nearly as much.
This was probably a new high water mark, at least with respect to.
Oh, by orders of magnitude. By orders of magnitude.
Well, I mean, we did have the Vietnam War protests, which were violent, but that was violence on the sides of the protesters, not on the side of the people. But then you also had
that as a difference in ideology.
Yeah, you also had you also had the in the South, the police were KKK. They were beating on the blacks.
That was criminal.
And that was. It wasn't as high a level in terms of, at the top of the government, but it was much more widespread, especially in the South, but not just in the South, because even in the North, you had the police discriminating against minorities.
Yeah, go as far as Minnesota.
Yeah. So, between violence by people in power and violence by people protesting, I suppose violence by people in power is more problematic.
Yeah, it's abuse of power.
Yeah, it's abuse of power.
But just the numbers of things that have happened that are unexplained and clearly corrupt.
Oh yeah. Well, corruption is nothing new. It's just that the species of corruption and the intensity of corruption and the elevation of corruption to the highest levels. You had corrupt governors. I mean, you've had.
Wait a minute. At least in previous administrations, there was an attempt to pretend that things were on the up and up.
Well, Nixon attempted to whitewash.
Yeah, exactly. What I'm saying about, this guy, the orange guy, is there was no attempt. It was all blatant. It was all just out and out lies and blatant abuse.
Yeah, the lies were transparent if you had your eyes open. Whereas with Nixon, there was a cover up. I mean, they really did try to keep the true story, from leaking. In this case, it was just a blatant lie. I mean, the evidence was pretty much in plain sight.
And the problem is, if it goes without consequence, that's the downfall of rule by law.
Well, that's the real issue, is whether or not rule of law applies to people in power, and whether it applies equally to people in power, and at what point do we recognize that the rule of law has inherent flaws that need to be addressed. And in my opinion, the only way to address the inherent flaws of the rule of law is upgrade from rule-based regulation to a more sophisticated, more mathematically sound one, protocols and functions models and that kind of stuff, which I don't really see happening. Well, certainly I don't, maybe not even in this century, because there's too much abstract mathematical systems theoretic issues in play for more than 5 or 10% of the population to even begin to appreciate them.
But the problem is, clearly though, even with an imperfect system, the fact that it's imperfect doesn't mean that it should be completely disregarded.
Oh, no. The thing is, you start
today.
Rules are basically a kindergarten level regulatory mechanism.
Yes.
The internet went to protocols at the beginning. They began with protocols, which are more powerful than rules.
Mm-hmm.
Protocols are a little bit like flexible rules. I mean, there's this notion of flexibility, which is what protocols provide. And then if you really want flexibility, you upgrade to mathematical functions within the protocols instead of switches, instead of steps.
Well,
discrete steps
with software / the internet is it didn't matter how complex these protocols are. It was
right
to comply with them.
The computer is perfectly happy to do functions.
Yeah, the problem with humans is humans can't handle complexity very much.
Right. They can barely handle a binary decision, let alone a discrete stepwise decision, which is approximating a nice graceful continuum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So going from a binary dichotomy to a stepwise discrete to a differentiable continuum, graceful, that mathematically is Newton, Leibniz, and beyond.
Right. How many people actually understand calculus?
5%, maybe 2%. People take it, but maybe 5 or 10% of the population take the course and get anything out of it, and maybe 1% actually use it, and maybe less 1% actually have any deep insight into it. So you have these narratives which are referring elliptically to mathematics, like for example, grace is the word they use in theology. Well, what is grace? Grace is graceful curve. It's basically differentiable, continuously differentiable. Is graceful. It doesn't have any kinks in it.
And even that's not a commonly accepted notion of grace.
Well, but I took the famous song "Amazing Grace" and I rewrote it as "Amazing Gradient," and it fits. You could plug in gradient for grace in terms of the mathematical concept of a gradient, that's continuous gradient. And the song now makes sense as a mathematical anthem, but it really comes from theology.
Most people won't know what you did.
Yeah. When you build a ship, when you're building the hull of a ship, there's something called a fair curve. To make a fair curve, You take a plank of wood and you bend it at the ends, and that's called a fair curve because it obeys some mathematical function about the stress, following some optimum shape. And that's how you get one, like you get a, what do you call it, a catenary, for example. And so grace is actually a word that you could use in math. And in fact, in catenary curves and fair curves, that's a perfectly good metaphor. But we tend to have a dichotomy between vocabulary, nomenclature in theology, and nomenclature in mathematics. And yet a lot of the two, the nomenclature really refers to the same abstraction, one in narrative and one in mathematics.
My point, going back to the system, is even with an imperfect system, if we don't comply with it, we don't even achieve the limited benefits that it's trying to provide.
Right, you're not even playing the game. In order to play the game, you have to at least obey the rules of the game.
Which is necessary unless you've got billions or trillions, right?
And you still have, a game is mathematically chaotic by definition. Anything that's nonlinear is likely to go chaotic if the nonlinear is intense enough, and a discontinuity is really nonlinear. So anything that's got discontinuities because of rules generally defines a game, which is a special case of chaos. It's interesting.
Usually the most that humans can understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, there's an astronomical number of legal games of chess or checkers or Go or any strategy board game where you don't actually roll the dice. You still have an astronomical number of
checkers.
Well, checkers, yes. The only one that's finite, that's well known, is tic-tac-toe. Tic-tac-toe, its N is not very big.
A win in tic-tac-toe, okay?
Yeah, because even a kid can get their brain around optimal strategy. When you get to chess or checkers or Go or games like that, the bush, the search space is so bushy, so astronomical, that there's no obvious optimum move at any one step of negotiating the tree. And you really have to appreciate, board games, strategy board games, as the introduction to chaos, which I don't think it's that hard to appreciate.
So we need the people who are playing this game to play properly.
Yeah, ethically.
That's Garland, that's Smith, that's Congress, that's the corrupt Supreme Court.
And that gets back to the notion that the optimal corrective measure for a departure from ethical behavior is punishment. And this is where it gets really weird, because if you want to evolve out of a crime and punishment regulatory mechanism, because punishment is intentional harm, intentional damage, intentional violence, and you want to get rid of violence in the culture, then you say, well, we have to have a corrective measure that's not inherently violent under the color of law. And then you get into ethics. And that really
not all consequences are violent. See, that's the thing.
Well, that's the whole point.
Let's say, for example, that an ex-president who has committed insurrection is not allowed to hold office. By nature, it's not inherently violent, that particular rule.
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy with you're disqualified. But the point is, you want to be disqualified on the basis that nobody would want to vote for you because you've been demonstrated to be unethical to the point of profoundly corrupt. But you don't want to take away the ability of people to make ethical choices and not coerce choices. And that's, so you get to these very subtle things about how do you educate people if they're not really eager, not enthusiastic about learning. You can't coerce people to learn. It doesn't work. So how do you empower people to learn when they're not motivated to learn, to ascend the ethical decision-making axis? And I don't really have a good answer to that.
You can actually only approximate it by a different correlate. In other words, if ethical behavior is in some way correlated to legal behavior, or is in some way correlated to successful economic behavior, then you can sort of use that as an approximate motivation.
I mean, here's what you do on the scale from optimally ethical best practices to really terribly. We put a floor at the bottom, and that's the law. So you don't want to fall below this floor, which is basically we're going to take you out of commission. And then, but there is no upper limit. Ethical best practices really doesn't have an upper bound. So you want to stay above this floor, but you still want to ascend as high as you can. And within that range, it's totally free will. I mean, you can't coerce people to adopt a position. You can only cause some kind of a disqualification if you fall below some particular floor. So, for example, you might have a floor say, here we have to send you back to remedial school. If you fall below that, we don't even send you back to school because there's no evidence that's going to do any good. But you got to have some kind of solution for this gray area, which we don't really have a solution for the gray area. We tolerate mistakes because you can't expect people to be error-free.
The law is not designed to optimize good behavior. It's only designed to punish bad behavior.
Exactly. And people think, how can you stay on the breezy side of the law and you're, quote, good? No, you're on the breezy side of the law, but you're not
minimally okay.
Yeah, you're basically avoiding, but that doesn't mean you still can get criticized. So you can say, well, I'll take the piss, I'll take the criticism, but you're not going to take away my rights or my ability. But you might not get a job offer. You might not get people willing to buy anything, to pay you to do anything. So it gets very fuzzy and gray, and in politics, it's really a kind of a terrible jelly mess at that bottom place. I don't really have a good solution other than the philosophy says ascend as high as you can. What was it? It says do the best you know how. When you know better, do better. Maya Angelou says that. I mean, really, that's about all you can say. And then you want to encourage people to do better.
But not is now, if it was purely just an ethical discussion, I would agree with that, right?
Yeah.
But if you couple that with being a member of a quote unquote economy, where the economy is motivating you to do the minimum ethical standard.
Yeah.
No more, because the more you do, the more you basically punish yourself in this economy.
In the long run. Yes. And the point is, people are myopic up to a point. They can't see over a horizon. You can keep pushing the horizon out, but still there's beyond the horizon. So how far into the future can you anticipate consequences that are natural consequences? And the answer is not forever. So I can do something which, far as I know, is optimal, but maybe in 10 years I'll go, oh, I didn't see that. I got blindsided beyond my horizon. And the prophets, the seers, the analysts, whatever you want to call them, try to see, beyond the nominal horizon that most people see, but then they don't get listened to.
Okay, so here's a hypothesis. Not a hypothesis, a hypothetical situation. Today, it appears to be ethical behavior that we all behave with the minimum carbon footprint, that we all conserve as well as we can, that we all consume as little as possible, that we all sort of stay within our
allotted amount of resources. Yeah.
Right. So here's the question. Let's suppose Buckminster Fuller, who saw systemically, who had a way of advising society about how to proceed. Let's suppose that somebody like Buckminster Fuller said, okay, I'm going to be green. I'm not going to make an impact on the world. I'll just stay in my little hut and I can write notes to myself. But essentially, I'm just going to do the best I can in my locale. So in that scenario, the world does not get the benefit of his wisdom.
You don't get the geodesic dome, for example.
Exactly. So is it better for him to have consumed a bit more electricity, to have actually burned a bit more wood, to have actually traveled more in, UFC vehicles and make an impact, okay? Because long term, maybe that's a better impact, even though in the short term,
right,
he was not actually as green as he could have been. Now, forget Buckminster Fuller. Suppose there's someone equally as brilliant or even more today who is taking that exact same question in mind.
Yep.
Right? A Henry David Thoreau, a Lao Tzu, a Buddhist monk.
Yep.
And they're choosing to live in their locale in their most wise behavior.
Yeah.
And you could say, well, that's the pinnacle of ethical behavior. That's about as wise and as ascetic as someone could live. But then maybe the world doesn't get the benefit of their wisdom, of their extensions of systemic beyond where Buckminster Fuller took it.
Yeah.
So
Dalai Lama, Thich Nhat Hanh, pick your.
That's right. So you cannot think just monotonically. You cannot just translate simply, in fact, that's simple-minded thinking, without understanding that it's not a linear function.
Yeah, it isn't. And you don't have the ability to predict the time horizon beyond you only have a certain time horizon beyond you have reliable predictions anyway. So at some point you say, I can't predict if this is going to be to the good or not to the good, in 10 years. I just have no reliable prediction.
And yet that can also be taken to extremes. We have people who say, okay, I'm not going to give this vagrant $1 or $5 or whatever, because if I collect, my assets, maybe I could start a research institute and make a bigger impact than actually just giving $5 to every person I see on the street.
That's what Michael did. Michael started an institute, but here's the funny thing about Michael. He kept adopting and modifying the names of his activities. So he started off with PrinterNet, and then he invented this name Nemetics, and then he had the Nemetic Institute for Participatory Action Research. And I happen to be in position to know where he got those names, because I supplied to him a term of art, action research, from the domain where I knew it existed in teacher action research.
Yeah, I remember.
Okay. And then he looked it up and found a completely different definition of it called political participatory action research in politics in South America. And so he took the name, but he simply inserted the name into his system, but with a meaning that departed from the original thing I was introducing him to. So this whole thing, Nemetics ended up being a backronym. And so he had all these things that, like, what the hell do all of these labels, and they were vague and ill-defined, and they sounded cool until you looked and said, what do they mean? And then the thing that really kind of got me scratching my head is that he wants to introduce the distribution of digitized knowledge. So make the knowledge available digitally, so you don't have to print a whole lot of paper in color. And then he's got these pictures of PrinterNet with these great big sheets of printed, a newsprint in color with, and I go, wait a second, how can you be at the one side talking about making paper, great big color paper documents, when you're really talking about digitizing stuff so you don't have a lot of paper? And I'm going, what the hell? On the one hand, PrinterNet, on the other hand, a digital economy, and then Nemetic Institute for Participatory Action Research. And then I'm looking at people who are attaching themselves to this. And I think, how do they know what they're attaching themselves to? Are they exploiting his umbrella? Are they getting underneath his umbrella because his umbrella sounds good, but they really don't need to be under his umbrella? And how do I know whether these hangers-on are legit or exploitative? And the answer is, I don't know how to tell, because I can't get any evidence to resolve whether or not his followers are exploiting him or really needfully benefiting from him. I never could resolve that.
I don't have visibility into that.
Yep, and that's the problem. And so, for example, here in the United States, when we had a lot of charities, there were people who looked at charities and says, what's their overhead? What fraction of the charity goes into doing the good as opposed to the offices and the people running it? And a lot of charities turned out to had a very high overhead and weren't worth putting money into. And so you wanted to say, well, United Fund, is that a good thing to put your money into? Are they doing a good job of vetting all the? And the answer is, it's basically a matter of trust, and trust is a matter of evidence that you can get and say, yes, I have good evidence that these people are using the money appropriately and not just, going out and having pizza parties.
Which is a function of transparency.
Yeah, and so the lack of transparency, the lack of reliable evidence means that I'm reluctant to donate money to organizations where I simply have no idea if they're legit, if they're efficient, if they're functioning, if they're effective, or if they're just, some cute sounding umbrella with hangers on getting underneath the end of the damned umbrella.
So like I said, I don't have visibility, but here's a couple of data points, okay? When Jonas Chobroka Fadwek asked for support so that his village could buy containers to collect water because they were in the middle of a drought, I posted that request.
Yeah.
One person and only one person came forth to pool their funds with me to help them get some water containers.
Yeah.
There was another business plan that he and another woman put together to, I think, start a bakery. And I circulated that business plan. No one has stepped forth to say, we'll help.
Because how do you vet it? How do you vet it?
I didn't vet it myself. I just said, okay, here's someone that Michael worked with.
Yeah.
So he evidently did some level of vetting. And
well, that's a good question.
Break me to help them with some water canisters. It's not going to break me to help them with a business plan to start a bakery. On the other hand, I would have thought more people would have given Michael the benefit of the doubt and said, okay, let me help. So I'm wondering whether people actually had that much level of trust and respect for Michael and or his network of people. Or, as you say, it was just lip service.
Yeah. And the answer is, I don't know, and maybe you don't know either, but
I really don't.
But I require more evidence than you do, I think. I think on general, I'm a little bit more skeptical and want more evidence before I will put my faith and trust in somebody for which I cannot see. There's no transparency. There's a lack of transparency. Look how many people put their faith and trust in Trump, and he wasn't that opaque. He was relatively transparent, and still people put their trust in him, and they gave him what $45 billion, million, trillion, whatever it was, for those stupid digital trading cards. I mean,
wasn't that much.
Well, whatever, 4.5
billions, right?
Billion, I think it was. I don't remember.
Billion?
I think it was 4.5 billion.
I don't know it's that high.
Maybe it's 4.5 million. I don't. Yeah, I think it was 4.5.
I heard 4.5 million.
Yeah, it was 4.5 million. You're right. In fact, I had to look that up because one of the headlines several of the headlines got it wrong. That's why I'm pausing, because I read more than one headline, and some of them didn't do the math right.
No, if it's look, if it's $100 per NFT, if 45 billion would have meant 450 million.
Yeah.
Okay,
so,
come on.
I think there was
that many people in the United States.
So there was I don't remember the number that they did. And by the way, you only got a fractional ownership of one NFT, which I don't really understand. If you only have a fractional ownership of an NFT, is that really something you can sell? I guess you can. Anyway, the whole thing seemed really, what's the word I'm looking for? Bogus is not the right word. It's
his money laundering scheme.
Yeah, it was really, anyhow.
Okay, but wait. The point that I'm trying to make is at least I can see some evidence. I don't know if it's fabricated, but at least there's some evidence. And by the way, I'm not calling into question anybody's integrity here, okay? But I'm just saying in theory, at least I saw some evidence that the education that I was paying for was actually being utilized, okay?
Yeah.
That the water canisters that I was paying for were actually being purchased and installed, okay? And that was sufficient for me, okay? Like I said. So I wonder though, what your standard needs to be to say, okay,
There you go.
I'll contribute 10 or 20 or $30 or whatever for water canisters, or I'll contribute 10 or 20 or $30 for a business plan to build a bakery, or whatever it is. So I'm kind of curious what level of standard we want to provide so that those of us can actually have more confidence that what we're supporting is actually taking place.
Yeah, and so they're not being taken for a ride.
Right.
And I don't really have a good concept of where you set the the minimum threshold for, say, okay, I'll donate this amount of money. I really don't have a good way to vet that. And I've seen so many cases where, I mean, even venture capital people put their money into, like, look at the money that they put into Sun Microsystems just before it failed. And so venture capitalists who are supposed to be really damn good at this.
Sun Micro didn't fail.
Say?
Sun Micro didn't fail.
What happened is that they began to fail around 2002 or 2003.
They sold Oracle for quite a good valuation.
Yeah, they sold Oracle for, I think, 8 billion, but they had lost 10 billion on what is it, Java or whatever it was they were selling. They actually they were making money, and then they started to lose money. And by the time they sold it, they had lost more money than they gained by selling it.
Yeah, McNeely understood iron. He didn't understand software.
Exactly. So the point is that if the people who are doing venture capital, look at the Bernie Madoff people. I mean, they got taken for a ride. And I look at all these scams. I got all these scams out there where really smart people.
SBF, just this past couple of weeks.
There you go. Elie Wiesel put money into Madoff and lost it. Elie Wiesel, the Nobel Prize in Peace, professor of theology at Boston University. So I look at these people who are a hell of a lot smarter than me, and whose livelihood is being a hell of a lot smarter than anybody else in the business, and they get taken for a ride on these scams. And even if you have a business plan, I mean, Sun Microsystems had a business plan, but the market conditions changed on them beyond what they anticipated, and faster than they anticipated.
Right, but the question is, are we doing it in anticipation of success, or are we doing it to promote engagement and entrepreneurism?
Yeah, and
different objectives.
Yeah, and I don't have a good insight into entrepreneurial activities, because you have competing objectives. You have the profit motive for the entrepreneur and the benefit to society motive for why there's people even going to buy your product or your service. And the balance between providing a valuable service versus earning a profit and delivering junk, it's a teeter-totter, and you don't know when the teeter-totter is going to go on.
If you're trying to support a village that's not, let's say, as well versed in entrepreneurism as, let's say, Silicon Valley is, right?
Yeah.
They're still learning, right?
Yeah.
So is it reasonable to say the very first effort must succeed economically?
Well, that's why you start small.
Exactly.
You start small, and you say, for example, you say, well, I will give you $5,000 for your tuition to take a course in the graduate level community college, but first I want to see you perform at a less intense, just one course. And then if you can show that you're a diligent student at the $500 level, then we'll talk about escalating to the next level.
Oh, bingo.
And I've gotten burned by giving people money to attend college, and the next thing they did is they took a holiday to Europe. Right. I go, if you had the money to take a holiday to Europe, why did you need the money for tuition?
Right. So
I've been burned on that kind of stuff where I had it on good authority that this person deserved, to have a help in tuition. Go ahead.
So it was probably more than a decade ago. Do you remember TARP?
Unpack the acronym for me.
Toxic
Was that the where the economy failed?
Asset Relief Program.
What's the T stand for?
Toxic.
Toxic.
Remember the derivatives and secondary products out of the investment world?
Yeah, but I didn't realize the T stood for toxic.
It stood for toxic.
Intentionally, or
Look up TARP.
right? I do remember that the building loan or savings loan or something. A huge credit. Lehman Brothers went out of business.
Let's talk about the bailout of
There was the automobile bailout.
Exactly.
There was Enron.
There was 785 billion with a B.
Yeah.
Dollars, where we, quote unquote, the government bailed out a failed business model.
Yeah. Yeah.
We do not live in a capitalist society if we bail out failed business models.
We bailed out the auto industry when they were not keeping up with the Japanese.
So wait, Barry, let me make my point.
Yeah.
My point is that rather than spending $785 billion on 2 or 3 failed companies, badly managed companies with lousy risk management and lousy projections, I would have preferred to take that 785 billion and say, let's take all high school kids in the entire country. I don't care who they are. Give them $50. Tell them to come back in a week and tell me what they did with that $50 to help society be better.
Yeah.
Take the top third of them.
Yeah.
Take the bottom 2/3 who wasted it and say, okay, you don't get any more. But take the top third and say, okay, we will give you $500. Come back in a month. Tell me what
you did with it. Yeah.
And again, peer-wise, let's let them evaluate themselves. And after a month, take the top third of them and say, okay, here's $5,000. Come back in 2 months, tell me what you did with it. Yeah. And after $5,000, then step it up. And each time, just slice it. Just
track record. Show me your track record. And that's the problem, is getting the track record and vetting the track record.
I don't even care about vetting it. I want the society to vet it. I want the local community to vet it. I don't want to vet it. I want the community to do it. And I want this process to then spread $785 billion to the best ideas of the next generation. Because the old generation, the guys running those Detroit companies, fucking failed.
Oh, yeah. Entrepreneurs, let's look at
Elon. Live in a capitalist society if that's what we do with failed companies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we're doing that with failed companies after hundreds of years of running these companies, why can't I give $50 to a woman in Malawi trying to start a bakery?
Yeah. Are you going to have that same stepwise thing every?
No, because I only know one business plan right there right now. So maybe I say, okay, find the other women in the village, the other 20 or 50 or 100 women, and give them each $10 or $20 or whatever.
Yeah.
And see what happens.
But they can't all start bakeries, because then you have too many bakeries.
No, that's the whole problem, is you don't put preconditions on it. You just let the society decide for themselves. They say, oh, 30 people, let's pick out the top 10 who utilize that money the best way we think could be.
I think Darwinian evolution kind of works that way. The universe gives you resources. If what you do with it generates a viable living system, then it gets more resources. So in some sense, nature does work that way, although not on a trial. I guess you have to say it's not even a trial and error basis over a very long period of time.
What I'm saying is, let these ideas percolate up.
Yeah.
Don't put $785 billion into old, bad, failed ideas.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah.
I think
infuriated me.
Politicians generals make terrible mistakes. I mean, look what Putin is making a terrible mistake. Our presidents have made terrible mistakes in the history of the US, and other world leaders have made terrible mistakes, very short range investment that blew up in their face. It happens. The smartest people are the people with the most power. Almost by definition, people with the most power make the most horrendous mistakes because they put so damn much resources into an idea that fails. So yeah, it's a problem, and that may be one reason why, for all we know, we're the only intelligent species in not in the solar system, in the galaxy.
We don't meet that standard yet.
No, and a lot of people think that we are going to run into a brick wall because we have intelligence but no wisdom, and that's the problem. It's relatively easy to get intelligence. It's really hard to get wisdom.
See, you minimize wisdom if you insert capitalism alongside.
Yeah, because it draws back the time horizon for measuring the payoff. If you're measuring the payoff per quarter, as opposed to per decade, yeah, then you're going to start making short-term investments that will do great in the short-term time horizon, but poorly in the long term.
Yeah, the best example of that is, let me meet my numbers, let me get rid of the bottom 10%. Doesn't matter who they are.
Yeah.
Oh, I can do just as well financially for a short term. And this is what happened when, bean counter said, oh, let's cut costs 20, 30, 40 years ago. Let's just send all these jobs overseas.
Yep. And look what happened. We lost the dominance of that particular industry. Yeah.
What happens when you let the bean counters take charge?
Yep. There's lots of mistakes where, it looks like a smart idea in the short term, but it turns out to be a dumb idea in the long term.
Oh, it was definitely smart financially in the short term.
In the short term, yeah.
Because that's all they were caring about.
Yeah. And I don't have a solution for that. You can observe it, you can model it, you can critique it, but that doesn't mean that you have any influence to cause the suboptimal practice to improve. We have so many suboptimal practices that just, even though you can recommend an improvement, you don't have the power to cause it to happen. This is why people schism and go off and start their own little colony. Look, all the little people split off and say, I have an incrementally better practice, better plan. Let me go off and start my own competing ones somewhere else. And then you lose your unity.
Which is why I think it's no longer a question of whether humanity can level up. It's a question of whether some small pocket of humanity can level up.
Yeah.
Humanity as a general 8 billion or whatever, we ain't gonna do it. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah. And I wish I had a good answer for that, but I don't. I can observe it. You and I can comment on it, make suggestions, but whether or not the change that we dream of ever comes about, more than likely it doesn't.
When I was growing up in the 70s, I guess, reading science fiction was such a source of optimism. It was saying we can improve the way we live. We can invent new things to help our lives, those of our neighborhood. It was such an optimistic genre of literature. It's a huge disappointment to me that it has to be balanced by all this crap.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons that people end up in a state of despair or cynicism. When I was at MITRE, the people with less than 5 years experience had a certain amount of enthusiasm in their work. And then if after 5 years they weren't, well, then, but towards the end of a 5 year period, they started to get frustrated because they weren't getting any evidence that their work was going anyplace. And then between 5 and 10 years, if they were still in employee, they would evolve from enthusiasm through frustration into cynicism. And then if they were still there after 10 years, it evolved from cynicism to bitterness. So you saw enthusiasm, frustration, cynicism, bitterness over like about a 15-year cycle. And basically at some point you say, I got to get out of this company. Because if I stay in this company, I'm going to go through that same cycle to frustration, to cynicism, to bitterness. And I say, I did all this work and nothing came of it. Nothing of great value came of it. I earned an income. I was able to buy groceries and pay rent and buy a car. But, you know, what the hell did I do for the benefit of the planet? And it takes a long time to realize that you're in the cycle from enthusiasm to frustration to cynicism to bitterness. I saw it at Miner after about 3 years. Partly by observing people who've been there a long time.
There's another magic quadrant that you know, people in leadership / management are taught. It's this level of engagement versus this dimension of how much oversight they need.
Yeah. How much coaching when they start to go stray off of the, you know, the straight and narrow, at what point does a coaching observer provide the feedback that the individual in the lane is not realizing they're drifting?
Right.
And that's a very hard thing to do, to be a good functional coach who provides that external feedback loop in a timely and psychologically functional manner. Either get critics that you ignore, or you get cheerleaders who basically aren't paying attention to your mistakes. You know, how do you become a coach that's, you know, that's right in the sweet spot of the feedback that you need at that time that you can act on?
There's one model that says of the 4 stages being high energy, but you don't really need a lot of engagement because they're so motivated when it started. They want to prove things, you know, they want to really make accomplishment. But then that next second stage is where now you really have to focus them a little bit.
Yep.
Okay. But they're still enthusiastic. They're not bitter yet. But the next stage is where they get bitter. And you need to make sure that they are still engaged.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one is where now they're quote unquote wise and mature, and they can be motivating, and they know, you know, how to align, and, you know, they don't need a lot of supervision. So there's that model where the middle 2 stages are the ones where you really need to focus.
That's where you can end up wasting a lot of time and resources and energy and funds, or you can make a lot of progress. You know, GE used to say progress is our most important product, and process is our most important impediment, because you get bogged down in process that's not making any progress. And it's really hard to tell.
The organization.
Say again?
If they're calcifying the organization.
Yeah, and it takes a while to recognize that.
Yeah.
You can't tell a process is
not a bad thing. It's not a 4-letter word.
Yeah.
It's when people take process and carve it into granite. That's the problem.
Yeah. So you can't, you lose your flexibility. You get ossified, bureaucratized, and pretty soon bureaucracy is crippling the whole organization. You've lost your flexibility.
Write things down. You have to write things in electrons, not in marble, not in granite.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, the more you go down to the infinitesimal level, the more you lose your audience, because they have no idea what you're talking about. You're talking about tiny little infinitesimal perturbations. But in the end, those perturbations may be the thing that matters in the long run. You know, in chaos theory, a tiny perturbation is the difference between hitting the moon and missing it by 1,000,000 miles. So those real-time course corrections, tiny little course corrections continuously do the job. And it took NASA a long time to work out, you know, real-time infinitesimal course corrections.
And yet, that requires sensors. That requires feedback.
Yes, absolutely.
It requires a proper interpretation of that feedback.
Yeah. You have to say, do I know where I am right now? To what degree of precision? Because if your uncertainty and precision is too great, then your control is you don't, control says, well, I need to turn, but I don't know which direction, let alone how much. So I have too much uncertainty right now.
Excuse me a second. I'm going to blow my nose. Okay, Barry.
Okay. Yep.
That's better. So the problem is, I think the people who control society, in other words, people who vote or people who amass the votes, want to think simplistically. They don't have, not even if they had the faculty to understand complex systems, to communicate it and
Exactly.
to get support for it is another entire challenge.
That's the problem. You can have a very simple idea that people can understand, but it's not going to turn out to be dysfunctional. You can have a very functional mechanism, but you can't explain it to people. This is the problem I had at Bell Labs.
Democracy based on voting by the masses,
Right.
is almost always guaranteed that the best ideas never get implemented.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's an art. It's it's an art and a science to be a problem solver, because you can solve a problem that is very clever, subtle, sophisticated, nobody understands it or can implement it.
Right.
And I ran into that problem at Bell Labs, where they would give me a problem to work on. I'd come up with a solution. The hardest problem was not devising a solution. It was communicating the decision and getting people to sign on to it. That turned out to be 3 times harder than getting the solution in the first place. That surprised me.
So it almost guarantees, rather than effective, agile movement towards progress, we end up in this very inefficient stumbling.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes when you stumble, you fall flat on your face and you go splat and you don't rebound. You're not resilient. You need to be resilient enough to rebound from a stumbling.
Yeah, because you stumble, and in our model of government, you're out of office and the next guy comes in.
Yeah, you're fired. Remember that Trump's what was his TV show called? You're fired. He was quick to fire anybody who stumbled, and yet he was a stumble bum, extraordinary. He never fired himself.
I watched that show for 1 or 2 or 3 minutes, and I couldn't stand it.
The Apprentice. I never watched it at all. In fact, I didn't even realize until he was running for president that NBC was, the network on which The Apprentice was running, and so they were making all kinds of money off of this show, and all he was doing was, firing people I think every week he fired somebody, didn't he? Wasn't that sort of the
and for 47% of this citizenry who vote, 47% thought that was business acumen. That's what they thought. Yeah. Anyway, Dig VJ, welcome.
Oh,
yeah.
Look who's here.
Yeah, how are you doing, guys? Yeah.
I bet. What's on your mind today?
Yeah. So how are you guys doing?
Well, I just wanted to let people know that I have an opportunity to go to breakfast. So as I mentioned, my participation here will end at about 25 or 30 minutes after the hour. But it's probably in your time zone, probably 5 or 10 minutes before the hour, because you're off by a little bit.
Are you on a 30-minute?
US and India are off by 11:30 or 12:30, depending on.
So it's not a whole number of hours.
Yeah, it's 10:30 here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's the entire country. They're on one standard zone.
Yeah.
Where in the US that would have spanned maybe 2 or 3, maybe even 4 time zones.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, Barry and I were talking about, what were we talking about, Barry? Oh, I was taking a modicum of what happened this week, hoping that the ex-president was finally going to get indicted with 4 criminal charges. Because if we don't do that, then at least the system of government in the United States will be proven to be completely ineffective and inconsequential. So we're looking for those people who have the power in this system to actually do something with that power. Anyway, so that's what got us started. But we don't have to talk about that. What's on your mind?
Well, I've not been on this group since a while now, I guess, not in this month. Last weekend, there was, some friends coming over. So before that, I have to go somewhere. So I was not, I was not able to join it. And today I talked to Ankur as well. And I called him specially for the meeting as well. That are you joining today or not? He said that he's traveling back to Delhi tonight. So he will join us today to tomorrow. I will. Yeah, he will join in Sunday's meeting. So yeah, I was, missing this thing out. Yeah, I was really missing this group. And yeah, it's good to be back.
So just FYI, Digvijay, I will be in Pune for most of the month of February.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. So you will be in Pune all the time, or you will, decide to come to the north as well?
We used to have an office in Delhi, but no more. We moved all those people to Pune. So I have been to Delhi previously. I think 10, 15 years ago, I went a couple times. But now all of our people are in Pune, so I will be there mostly. It's all work. It's not a vacation, so I will be in Pune our time.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So what you guys talked about this whole month. I mean, yeah, it's been 2 Sundays, 3 Sundays. Yeah. So what was the topic that you guys touched?
It's pretty far ranging, but I myself personally didn't get involved in every one of them. I had other things going on. But Barry, I think, was pretty consistent. Barry, I think, has attended every single meeting.
Yeah, I've been here every Saturday and Sunday for the duration, even though not a whole lot of people were turning up.
Yeah.
You recall what you and Josh and Kayla may have spoken about in those sessions, Barry?
Kayla actually wasn't. Sometimes she tuned in while she was doing the dishes or something before she had to leave and do something else. But Joshua and I were talking, among other things, about chatbots and other kind of very arcane technical stuff. He really wanted me to play with that Chat GPT. And it turned out you'll never guess the reason why I can't talk to Chat GPT. The reason I can't talk to it is because to register on the site to talk to it, you have to give them a valid cell phone number, a real cell phone number, not a Google Voice number. I don't have one. I gave them my Google Voice number because they wanted to, verify a text. We don't accept VoIP numbers. And I couldn't figure out a way around that. So I never got to talk to ChatGPT because they don't have a real cell phone.
That's awesome. So where is Joshua right now?
Where's what?
Where's Joshua right now? Is he?
He hasn't turned his camera on, but he's in California at his mountain retreat, I imagine.
Okay.
He connected, but he never turned on his camera. He never checked in. Partly because I think he connected the same time that I did.
No, I'm here. I've been here the whole time.
Yeah, you've just been listening.
Josh
is a listener.
Joshua?
Josh is always listening.
I just listening. Yep, not.
He's a spy. He just listens.
How are you, Joshua? It's been a while. It's been a lot of
I'm good. Good to see you, Digvijay.
Yeah, I'm good. It's good to be back. And today I was talking to Ankur, by the way, that about the meeting that you're going to join today. He said that he's traveling back to Delhi tonight, so he will join tomorrow's meeting if possible. Yeah.
So just as a possibility, tomorrow we may have someone participating for the very first time. He's a person I've known for probably 1, maybe 2 decades. And he's very interested in systemic thinking,
Okay.
mathematical
Sam.
modeling, critical reasoning, etc. And his name is
Sam.
also Sam.
Sam
He
Chan.
and I would be the two Sams, but it's not certain that he will join tomorrow, but there's a possibility that he would.
There are three Sams. There's Sam Han, Sam Chan, and Sam. Good luck keeping them straight.
So
So Digvijay, you made a comment about this group. What did you miss about this group?
well, I think 2 weeks ago, when I was sitting with my friends having a talk about the modern trends and stuff like that. So as always, I say this thing that the critical thinking part, which I tend to explore more in this group, it gives me an extra edge, whenever I talk about something or when I dive deep into anything in general as well. So yeah, I think that's what I missed, because the field of view has really widened up, and the perspective has more acceptance as well. That I'm very open to the new perspectives as well. So I think that that recharge is required. that constant stimulation is required. To keep that thing up and running. That's what I missed a lot. That that okay, those batteries are not charged, and I'm just I would say my talks are pretty much cyclical now. That okay, I talk in this pattern because I was not exposed to a lot of stimuli. So yeah, that's what I missed, and it's always fun to be here. I genuinely explore a lot, and yeah, now I think that okay, what's new, which is going to happen this week. So yeah, that's get me excited, a lot excited about things to come as well. And I'm very interested in talking about Barry's research to other people as well, that he has done some groundbreaking work in the field of cognitive learning as well. So yeah, I was talking about this group when I was there sitting with my friends as well, that I'm part of such a group, and we talk a lot about such stuff, and which is very productive. And I would I recommend it to them as well, that if you ever get time in weekends, please join in, because they are also scientists. So, yeah, it was all things like that.
Did you know that I had given a 90-minute recorded talk on that material a couple of weeks ago, and it's up on YouTube now?
No, I didn't know about that. Please
Let
share the
me-
link.
Let
Yeah,
me
please share the link.
let me get you the link to it. Yeah, there's a local group that scheduled me to give the talk, and I did. In fact, let me just copy and paste into the chat where I reported that here. So there's a link to the video, and that's basically the material that you've seen already. I'll put that also in the chat, just so that it's all in one place in case anybody looks at it later.
I want to share this to Ankur as well, because he's actually very interested in taking on this study as well.
Yeah.
That we discuss a lot about it, and he's very interested in it as well.
Yeah. So that was a live audience. Well, it was on Zoom, but it was still a live audience with interaction, questions and answers and comments, and was a 90-minute recorded presentation that was just uploaded about a week or two ago. So
That's awesome. Yeah. I almost missed today's meeting actually, but I'm glad that I'm here. Actually, I tried to join twice earlier as well. Once at 8:30 and then again at 9:30, and the meeting did started. So I just
we went off of daylight time back to standard time
Okay.
I think in early November. I think right after
Okay.
Halloween.
Uh-huh.
So if you didn't, if you
Yeah.
weren't doing daylight savings time in South, which I don't think you do, then there would be a 1 hour time shift when we switch from
Okay.
daylight to standard time.
Mm.
It must be cold there. It's cold here too. It's 15 degrees here.
Yeah, it's 11 degrees here right now, and then Mohali. Yeah, it's winter. So yeah.
Yeah, it was 10 degrees this morning at dawn.
So, what are your plans for Christmas? Do you have any plans for Christmas?
Well, I have an invitation for Christmas Eve dinner tonight and Christmas Day dinner tomorrow with some friends
Okay.
who live not too far from here.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, actually, that's what Uncle said to me. That okay, tomorrow's Christmas, so maybe today's meeting is not going to be held. But I told him that no. That is pretty consistent with this
Yeah,
with
I
this schedule.
have friends who always have traditional meals on the holiday, whether it's a religious holiday or a secular holiday. They always have a big meal gathering. And the one tonight is actually, we're talking about symbols. The one they're going to do tonight is they always have, I think, either 7 or 9 kinds of fish, because each kind of fish is supposed to symbolize one of the sacraments of,
Okay.
I think Catholicism has the fish symbol sacrament, so that they usually have 9, 10 different kinds of fish on Christmas Eve dinner.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
And what's your plan?
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. What's your plan, Sam?
Actually, I'm gonna go see if I can have brunch with my daughter later today. No, tomorrow. I'm gonna see if they're open tomorrow. Because my daughter, her puppy had intestinal problems this week. So she's gonna stay home rather than travel and leave the puppy alone or take him on the road. So she's actually gonna stay home with her puppy. So I'm gonna go visit her.
Okay, so you live in the same city or?
It's not
live
long.
somewhere?
It's only a little over an hour away by car.
Okay.
Pretty close. Yeah. Speaking of which, Barry, you were talking about the weather. 2 days
Yeah.
ago, overnight, it got down here somewhere around 10 or 11 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yep.
Pretty cold.
Yeah. For you,
Okay.
that's
Okay, that's 11 degrees Fahrenheit. We use Celsius here actually. So I
So
was,
in Celsius terms, that would be probably minus what, 25, 24, something like that.
yeah. It's 11 degrees Celsius in here.
yeah.
So anyway, today, 2 days later, it's
Yeah.
gonna be 50 degrees today, 50 Fahrenheit.
Whoa.
So it's a big swing just in 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went from in the 50s midday yesterday to 10 degrees overnight last night, but no snow. Although Vancouver, British Columbia got a lot of snow.
We've been having a lot of snow here. In fact, 2 days ago, I had 6 inches of snow.
Oh, that's a lot for
all
you.
gone.
Yeah. We just got a very light dusting here overnight, nothing to speak of. Little patchy dusting. We had rain yesterday. It rained. It was windy and rainy, but relatively mild temperatures for this time of year.
Yeah, that's what melted all the snow is the warm rain.
Yeah, that would do it. So,
Well, it turns out we didn't lose a single duck. All the ducks are still alive, even though all the cold hit.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
yeah, well, those downy feathers, they do their job.
Plus, we hauled out warm water for them every night.
I see.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to be getting ready for breakfast in the next 5 or 10 minutes. So I just want to say, if I leave abruptly, that's why.
Okay.
Not a problem.
So chat group with no talking, huh, Barry?
Yeah.
I can't just keep listening if there's no talking.
The only, yeah, I don't really have that much to say that would be terribly interesting. I mean, it's not like I have nothing to say, but I don't think it'd be boring.
Yeah, I'm still processing stuff. It's been a week of what's possible. Anything's possible. Okay, great. Let's stop the war. Let's rally on the Washington DC and stop the war. So that's what we're all doing.
Yeah. But I think you were already on when Sam was wondering what's going to happen, since the committee recommended that they charge Trump with crimes, and whether or not that's going to happen. That's sort of a big unknown here, obviously.
Yeah, I just remember when Doug went through his stuff with Gertrude to get rid of his stuff with Trump. That was like a year in the making because he was very upset by Donald Trump. And then he let it go.
Yeah, I think we sort of became inured to the continuation of corruption in government at unprecedented levels. Over my lifetime, the levels of corruption really have risen significantly.
I think they just got better at stealing money.
Yeah, they got really good. Well, they got really good at gaming the system. The one thing,
Yeah.
Gaming the system wasn't even a term of art until quite recently. And when I first heard the term used, I realized, oh boy, they're smart enough to game the system, but not smart enough to make the system ungameable.
Oh,
There's actually,
wow.
there was actually a couple of guys who won the Nobel Prize in Economics more than a decade ago. I think 3 guys won the Nobel Prize in Economics for demonstrating with the mathematics of economics that it's possible to design a system that is immune from gaming, that any departure from ethical practice is a disadvantage to the person who's departing. So your optimal practice is not to game the system, but to stay optimal. And they showed.
Was that a paper that they wrote that they got the prize for?
Well, probably more than one paper, but they won the Nobel Prize for demonstrating this idea, this economic model for an ungameable system where you cannot benefit by gaming the system. So we know that mathematically it's possible to construct a system for which you hurt yourself if you game it.
Yeah.
And I wrote when that Nobel Prize came out, which is like more than 10 years ago, I wrote a very short blog about it just to document that I had observed it and thought it was interesting. And after that, it's like everything. The general public forgets all this stuff, and they don't build on it. And here we are with gaming the system to the nth degree, like we've never seen before. It's become a practice. Gaming the system is now a practice.
Yeah. Yeah, I just bought stock for the first time, and when I set up the brokerage account, it said, do you want to be able to trade during the day? And no, I don't, but they gave me that ability, but I don't want to. But then my friends were like, oh, just write a Python script that says when it hits this, sell here, when it hits that, buy here. And I'm like, people are actually letting computers buy and sell their stock for them.
Yeah, and that's a problem because then you get very short time race conditions, which can be very, very unstable.
That's what's going on.
Yeah, there were a couple of cases where people were writing, having very short transaction delay times, and that nanosecond advantage meant that you could do a trade before any competition could get their trade into the queue, and that created a big instability.
Yeah, it was exploited.
Yep. They put in a direct fiber link between New York and Chicago just to defend against that. Huge expense to put in a fiber link.
I heard about that. That was what, in 2009 or 10?
Yeah, I don't forget. I was more than 5 years ago, maybe 5-10 years ago. There's a
Yeah.
very nice story about that phenomenon. I saw somebody did a nice documentary of it that's up on YouTube.
Yeah, I think everyone should have to put their stock in for at least 5 to 10 years.
Well,
It
that
should
was the
be like a
original
bond.
idea. That was the original
Yeah.
idea. That arbitrage becomes a possibility, and then the faster you can execute a transaction, the more you can benefit from arbitrage. And that turned out to be a way of gaming the system.
Well,
You know,
also having voting rights as a stockholder that puts you into the game of wanting the best for that company as opposed to
Yeah.
just trading it in a couple hours.
Yeah, exactly. That you've got a long-term, you're investing for the long term instead of just trying to make money
Yeah.
off the perturbations in the market.
Yeah, it turned into the casino.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I'm hoping for the long term. We'll see what happens. But
Well,
yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
very
the real
I'm
long
opti-
term was, go ahead.
oh no, I'm just saying I'm very optimistic about what's possible. I don't know. The thing the only perturbation that I see that will make a new future not possible is World War III. And I think the only thing from what every analyst I've seen says that for sure, because of Ukraine's, they got a little bit of money from America recently, but it's not enough to win a war against a country like Russia. So there's no way that they can win that war.
But they can delay losing it indefinitely.
Correct. Correct.
Which means that Russia and the Ukraine and everybody who's supporting Ukraine are expending resources to no good end. Just putting off the, as long as possible,
Until they're ready to get involved.
the tragedy. So,
Yeah.
so you end up blowing away all your resources for no good end, for longer times.
It's pissing off a lot of people. A lot of people are coalescing together. I just watched the Libertarians, the New People Party. Bunch of people are getting together to protest the war. So I'm hoping it's a good protest.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I don't know that the average Russian has much effect protesting against Putin. He's got too much power. And too
Oh no,
much
I'm talking about Americans.
Well, how does Americans protesting the war in which Russia's trying to invade Ukraine, how does the Americans have any real influence? I mean, we're not in favor of that war. We're helping Ukraine defend themselves from Russia.
What happens when Russia wins?
I don't know. I'm not a political pundit. I have no way to predict what happens in human political affairs. It's just, all I can tell you is that my great grandparents got the hell out of Ukraine 120 years ago when things were bad. And that's why I was born in Kansas instead of Kiev.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to see the industrial military complex taken down at least by half. That's all I want. Just half. I think half is still a huge complex.
Yeah.
But I think half of that money spent on something else of rebuilding infrastructure for, like you're saying, create a new economic system that can't be gamed or do something.
It's possible, but I just I don't see any reason to believe it's going to happen because our species, I once was listening to a rabbi identify the three biggest unsolved problems in human behavior. And he said, the three things that drive people are sex, power, and money. Good luck getting people to not be driven by sex, power, and money.
I think you can still be driven by sex, power, and money and not want to go to war.
Oh, yes, you don't. Yeah, except what does power mean? Power means you get to make up the rules for everybody else to follow. So you get to be
Well, if we all agree to be powerful together to say no to the Department of Defense,
yeah,
stop building weapons and giving them to
I don't know,
other people.
Try withholding the fraction of your taxes that goes to the DOD. Good luck. You really can't. I mean, that's the thing about.
Actually, you can. There's a trick around it, but most people don't want to do it.
Well, you have to leave the country.
No, you can still stay in the country.
But not have any American income. I don't know.
yeah, just don't have the amount of income that's taxable. So you have to go under, I think it's 19 or $20,000.
Yeah.
So if you live on a small wage like that, but you can still survive, you're
Yeah.
not thriving, but you're surviving.
Yeah, I get that point. If you're living in the barter economy and you're not earning a lot of cash that's taxable, yes, I see that.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't think it's illegal to barter either. I think it's illegal.
It's not illegal to barter, but I think you still have to declare equivalent income.
If it's a certain amount.
Yeah, I don't know.
So you just have to do small barters.
Yeah, that I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's under $600.
So we live in this very strange culture. Parts of our culture, are quite commendable, and parts of it are not commendable.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I just watched the first movie, short movie to be produced on AI. And then I talked to people in the Hollywood industry, and they've been producing movies with AI for a while now. They've been writing scripts with it, at least, not directing it.
So the actual plot is being drafted by the AI, not just the special effects and stuff.
Yeah, that's what Netflix has been doing, is they've been looking at the different plot areas where they're losing people and rewriting the plot so that people keep watching the shows. Much like YouTubers do.
I was going to say that's also what Facebook does to keep people, they want to promote the kind of content that keeps people attending, but in the long term, that's not good. In the long term, that turns out to be toxic.
Yeah, well, Netflix has become toxic. It's not.
Well, yeah, and at some point, the toxicity basically poisons the whole system.
Yep.
But it's a slow boil. It's a frog in a slow boil, and the toxicity basically arises so slow that you don't appreciate it until it's too late.
Yeah, these are weapons of math destruction.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but I have been trying to see if the computer can draw, and so I found a code, Python code for drawing, and it's a Picario, it's called, and a computer will draw thickness and thinness of lines. So
I want a Python code that will find out how to fix the bug in compiling my Python code. I downloaded a Python script and got it to work. It took a while. I got it to work, but it's slow because it's interpreted. So I said, well, there's a way to convert Python script into an executable. And I did that. And the executable reports something that was missing that wasn't missing in the script. And I have no idea how to debug it.
you can't put that code into a debugging program?
Well, the thing is, it says some module is missing. When I run the script, it's fine. But
It doesn't tell you what line?
Yeah, it tells me somewhere. It tells me somewhere it's wanting to bring in a module that it doesn't know anything about, but only in the compiled version, not in the Python script version.
Oh, so the compiler's the problem.
So it compiles it into an executable, which I can then launch, and then it fails because it's missing a module. But it was there, the module, whatever we wanted, it was there in the scripted version.
It's just when you compile that it's not there.
Right.
So you just need a different compiler, or?
So I use a compiler called PY2 app. That's the name of the compiler.
Okay.
And I
So
used
maybe it's just
PY2 app, and it generated, Mac OS executable, but the Mac OS executable now complains there's something missing. But it wasn't missing when I ran the script. So I don't know what the problem is. I need a Python script that can debug its own, physician heal thyself, Python,
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me why you work as a script, but not when you're compiled.
It sounds like whoever made the compiler, there's something wrong there.
Probably so. And the thing is I could buy an app for $35 that does the same job, but I wanted to see if I could, just, get the function in Python, which I can, and then get the Python function in an executable, which I can generate an executable, and
Have you put it up on GitHub and asked someone to help you?
I've actually searched for people reporting the same issue, and it's real spotty. That's how I solved some of the issues, by searching for people with the same error message. And I solved one or two of them, but I still have one that maybe in a week I'll figure out, or I'll just give up.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything. I never learned Python. It's
Well, the thing is, this computer that I'm on, which is one that I normally sit at, it's an older machine with an older operating system. And I have newer machines, newer operating systems elsewhere in the house. But I like to sit here. So I think, well, okay, so I can use remote desktop to access the other machines from this machine. That's fine. But if I want to play a video and get the audio, I want to also get the audio off the other machine. And so they have a thing called AirPlay. AirPlay allows you to get both the video and the audio. And the problem is that this older machine doesn't have a native AirPlay receiver. It can send, but it can't receive. So I was looking for an AirPlay receiver for this older machine, and there's one you can buy for $35. And Python has one that you can install in Python that does an AirPlay receiver. But I wanted to compile it because there's too much latency in the interpretive version. Too much
now
delay.
it's starting to come into play. That's what the executable does.
Yeah, I wanted the executable to be more efficient because when I use the Python script, it runs too slow, and the audio is choppy.
Got it.
So
You're trying to go around the built-in systems, build your own system then.
well, the thing was, you want to retrofit functions, which are very nice functions, but they're not supported for the older editions of the hardware, the Macintosh hardware, or Macintosh software. So the AirPlay receiver was a very nice thing, because basically it means that anything on one machine can be viewed and listened to on the other machine, as long as they all support both send and receive audio, video.
Yeah.
And
If I could be wrong, but it sounds like the system is just blocking you on purpose. Like it's built in something to say, if you make your own program, don't run it. Only run the Apple program.
Well, the AirPlay receiver only emerged natively in Monterey, which is the most, Mac OS just released Ventura, but before that was Monterey. Monterey had the AirPlay receiver native. Anything older than that, the AirPlay receiver wasn't native.
Yeah.
So it could be a sender, but not a receiver. And I could buy just an AirPlay receiver, piece of hardware, or I could buy the software that does it. But I wanted to see if I could just, install it, on this old machine. And it turned out yes and no. I can get a script, but it runs a little bit too slow, and I can't compile it.
Oh,
At least not yet.
it's a worthy try. Yeah, it's a worthy try.
I mean, here I am. I mean, it's crazy. I'm turning 78. Why am I futzing around with this stuff? But just because, I got time on my
It's
hands.
fun. Yeah, it's fun. Why not?
I can learn. Basically, I can learn why things are harder than you think they should be.
Yep.
Why do it yourself? Why people don't do it yourself? Because you try to do it yourself, and even if you think you know what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing. Anyhow.
Yeah, if it's a luxury and you don't necessarily need it, if you had it, great. If you don't have it, it's fine too.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I don't really need it. I thought it would be nice to be able to listen to audio sent from one of the other machines in the house.
Yeah, that's my basically favorite reason using the Apple ecosystem. I have these little headphones.
Mhm.
So if I'm on my iPhone, I'm listening, and then I pick up my iPad, it just switches over naturally.
I think
And then I walk up to
theoretically,
my computer and it switches over naturally. So I'm never,
yeah,
it's just
I mean,
all one
it's
ecosystem.
it's possible that I have some Bluetooth earbuds laying around that I could simply have the other machine send it on Bluetooth. I haven't tried that. Because
That's a quick
I
fix.
wanted to come out of my speakers, not out of the earbuds.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
maybe
I hear you.
maybe that's the next thing I'll try. It's
Yep.
just hacking. It's just hacking for the hell of it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not any.
Yeah. I used to have fun just hacking everything. And then it seems like everything I've ever hacked, eventually it just gets put into the operating system.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite possible that eventually the AirPlay receiver will become a freebie as opposed to a $35 piece of software, which you could buy a piece of hardware for the same amount of money.
Yeah. Yeah. Every plugin I've ever put into WordPress that I really needed eventually got put into the theme itself
Right.
of the WordPress theme.
Yeah.
So all the, like, I would watch people with these really nice WordPress themes that are really clean and simple, but then they add all these plugins which make it as bulky as the theme that I have. So they're like, oh, you're using this terrible theme. It's really bulky. It takes up a lot of space. It's not fast.
Yeah,
But
it has a lot of overhead. There's a guy who developed a theme for Ubuntu that makes your Ubuntu desktop look exactly like Mac OS. And he put up a video where, you know, visually it looked like it. The thing is, I don't know how fast the machine he needed to have it running on. And after he put it in, he tore it down anyway. So,
oh
but
yeah,
you can, you know, you can put a skin on Ubuntu that makes it look exactly like a Mac OS user interface.
well, that's a nice feature for a lot of people that are used to that interface.
Yeah. I mean, it's still Ubuntu under the hood. So, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know, people do all this kind of hacking, and sometimes you find it's not too hard and it's kind of cute and it's worth doing. And sometimes it just turns out to be a pain in the butt. It's got glitches in it, and it's not as smooth as it would be if it was done professionally.
Yeah. Yeah, when I work professionally, I just don't have time for that. Just because it's saving $30 and making it lose me $200. At some point, it's like, okay, well, I did it myself. It's all working, and then all of a sudden, a moment of where it has to work, it stops working,
Yeah,
and I just said, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore.
yeah. I mean, I do a lot of. I mean, most things that people do for amusement and entertainment, they do it for amusement and entertainment, not because it's, you know, just something to not be sitting around twiddling your thumbs and being bored.
Yep. Yeah.
And maybe you learn something that turns out to be useful. The other day, in Toastmasters, one of the women who had a role to play, she didn't realize it, but she had set up her iPhone to transmit to her Macintosh. So when she tried to go onto Zoom, she was getting the camera from her iPhone instead of the camera from her iPhone, and she couldn't figure out why she couldn't get her camera to work. Turned out she had gone into the I think it was called AirPlay mode. She was transmitting the camera from the iPhone, which is sitting aimed at the ceiling. and I couldn't diagnose it because I wasn't even familiar with that functionality. But now that I learned about AirPlay, I thought, well, let me see if I can understand how AirPlay will transmit, you know, the contents of a cell phone or another machine to another one. Turned out that's why I was playing around with actually using it as intended on my multiple machines around the house.
Yeah, it's pretty neat, the OBS and transferring video to other places.
Yeah.
I think a lot of my friends, they'll transmit up to a streaming service and then watch movies with each other, so other people don't have to pay for the movie.
Yeah. OBS is really hard to use though. It's got so many controls on it, and I used it once or twice. I go, I'm really not mastering this at all. I don't understand the user interface. It's too technical.
Yeah, I try, I don't know, I just kind of got overwhelmed with, okay, I can stream to 7 platforms at once. What am I doing here? Am I a broadcasting company? Like, what am I doing? I'm on
Yeah,
Twitch, I'm on Facebook Live, I'm on Instagram Live. Like, what am I doing? Why am I doing that? It's just gonna confuse everybody that I want to have watch the stream because I don't have followers on all those platforms. So it's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of stuff simply has no market. That they're just cute things that you can do, and then after you've done them once or twice, they have no use. They don't have any persistent utility.
Well, I just realized if I have anything good to say, it's worth saying the next day. So I can just record it and put it up on YouTube.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy enough to record a video and then upload it to YouTube just with conventional, native stuff.
Well, we did just to see if we could. At one point I was broadcasting the GCC on Clubhouse just to see if I could. And then I realized it just confused people because they go into a room on Clubhouse and hear people talking from Zoom and they're like, who's these people? What are they talking about?
Right. It's very confusing. Well, we're doing hybrid meetings in Zoom where half the people are going to the community center in person and half of them are at home on Zoom. And so I'm setting up this mini TV studio in a satchel, an old camcorder on a tripod, which is then going through an HDMI to USB adapter so it can go into my laptop. So I've got this room camera that's on a tripod with an HDMI output, adapting it to become a webcam, and then being one of the participants in the Zoom and doing spotlighting. It was really complicated just so that people could be half at home and half in the room and see everybody, who didn't have a laptop in front of them. It's a huge amount of overhead for almost no utility.
And you need Chuck and Connie in the control room. Hello, this is Chuck and Connie. We're going live now to the Toastmasters meeting, and you need someone to transfer the audience over to different places.
You really need 3 operators. You need a camera operator, you need a lighting and stage director, and then you need somebody who can do the spotlighting and unspotlighting. And if you try to do all 3 of them at once, you don't have enough hands. So I can get up and move the camera to somebody who's in the room talking, and then I got to go back and spotlight them.
You got to have help, man. You need that Chat GPT to be doing it in the background.
You need like 3. I mean, if you look at any TV studio, you got a director, a technical director, a camera operator, a lighting person, somebody who's sort of a floor manager. So you got somebody who's sitting in the room, but they position themselves in front of a window where the light from the window is now washing them out. And you want a floor manager saying, no, I need to have you sit there so that you're properly lit for that camera that's there. And if that camera's there, then the person running that camera is not also, technical directing. And you need like 3 or 4 people who all know what they're doing.
Yep, you got to do what I did. Just go to the colleges, stick up a little poster on the board.
We tried that. We tried inviting.
You tried that?
We tried. Emerson College, has a whole program in radio TV.
Yeah, why don't they just come and do it for you? Some college.
We sent a request to Emerson College. Nobody even inquired.
Well, how many you got to have 20 colleges in your area. Send it to all of them.
Well, I thought there's a couple of other ones that might have undergraduates who might be interested. But the thing is, you have to drive to Lexington in the middle of the day on a Thursday, and you're going to spend 3 hours between driving, setting up, tearing down, and driving home. It's going to be a 3-hour thing for what value? What are you going to get out of it?
Well, you got to move it from Lexington somewhere else.
It's a Lexington club.
Well, the Lexington club has to go hang out in Cambridge.
Yeah. So, they really wanted to do hybrid. They wanted to stop doing the Zoom only. So they went to hybrid way back in July. And I was the only person who could even imagine being able to set up a room camera to show people in the room to people at home. And, we went through a phase of using a really old Polycom speakerphone from 10 years ago to buying a modern one, to going from a little webcam to using the the camcorder with an adapter. You know, we're kept working our way up, but now now it's a complicated thing, and I'm the only person who actually knows how to set it up. I'll run it and tear it down. There's nobody else who could possibly set it up, run it, and tear it down.
I don't know. I think that club needs to be disbanded.
Yeah, well, here's the funny thing. Toastmasters began a century ago for wayward adolescents in Bloomington, Indiana, who needed some kind of structure in their life.
Once you told me that, Barry, come on. What are they doing? It's 100 years later. Come
I
on.
know, 100 years later, using the same program.
What are they doing?
As if here we are with, graduate
Your wayward
level.
children.
Here we, and we're still using a program that was designed, optimized for wayward adolescents a century ago. So,
Yeah.
But things get structured, and then they don't change the structure.
Well, that's what I've been enjoying the Chat GPT, just to change the structure and ask it to think of new structures and new ways of being. And I think it's going to take off.
Well, ask GPT to figure out how to make it possible for me to talk to it without having a real cell phone. Why they can't vet me with a Google Voice number, I don't know.
Or why can't you just get a cell phone?
Well, I don't. First of all, I have a smartphone, but the only time I went,
we've had this conversation. Just get a cell phone. Just go bite the bullet. Pay $30.
well, it's $30 a month.
No, but I guarantee you stick up a Patreon or a GoFundMe, fund Barry for a cell phone for Chat GPT.
No.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to do that. You don't want to deal with that.
No, that's crazy. It's not that I can't
It's crazy,
afford it.
but I guarantee there'll be one person that goes, yeah, here's $130. Go get a cell. That's the whole year.
Yeah. I'm not. That's unethical. I wouldn't do that.
Well, your ethics are strong, Barry. I admire it. I feel you on that.
It's just.
I think sometimes you have to be unethical in order to achieve the means that you have, where it's your ethics, but not someone else's ethics. So they're not breaking their ethics.
Look, I can throw away this Mac Pro that's running El Capitan and buy a modern machine that runs Monterey, and then I wouldn't have, futzing around with AirPlay. But,
Yep, you could.
The thing is, I don't want to send all these to the junk pile. I want to keep this technology running. So it doesn't,
because of your ethics.
Because the ethics is don't throw stuff away if it's functional. Keep it
right.
That's. I drove my car for 25 years until it got to the point where I just couldn't keep it in safe running condition anymore after 25 years. And then I broke down and bought another used car.
Yeah, I think for me, it's very liberating to take 20, 30 years of ethics and throw them out the window. And then just like, I told people I would never go to Apple because I don't like that company. I'm a Windows guy. It's unethical for me to switch over. I can't do it. That's for people that want to spend too much money on a ridiculousness. I'm never going to do that. And then I switched my ethics and I've been happy.
Well, I like Apple technology. It's really good technology. I don't particularly like Windows. I use Linux. I use all three, but I even use NetBSD, if you can believe that. And I even use Solaris, if you can believe that, on Spark machines or Ultra machines. So, I'm still running technology that's 30 years old.
Yeah. Well, I'm throwing plastic in the landfill lately, and I find that to be unethical, but
yeah. So I can't really, so between convenience and functionality and not disposing of stuff before it, its useful life is over, I tend to err on the side of keeping old technology going longer than it makes probably a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That's why we're going to fix it shop. People bring in, old household items that really should be thrown away, but we put them back into functioning service for them. And a lot of them just have sentimental value. They've decorated their house with a lamp, and they don't want to throw that lamp away. They just want a new, they want the light bulb to work. The cat chews up the wire, we put a new wire on it for them. And people have sentimental value for stuff that could be thrown away.
Yeah. Well, I really got nothing. I'm just blown away by the possibilities and just trying to wait till next year and see how this year turns out.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the thing I would really love is for solar power to become such that, you know, the window shade on my window would collect the solar photons instead of blocking them, collect them and, you know, provide power to run some of this. But that technology isn't practical yet.
no, but neither is the tinkering you're doing anyway. So it's not practical. So just do it anyway, just for fun.
Well, except that, you know, I mean, first of all, I don't think you even make window shades that are solar collectors.
Sure they do. Yeah, make everything. Anything you could ever imagine or think about is happening right now, Barry. Literally anything and everything.
Yeah, but the thing is it practical?
No.
I mean, because the cost of manufacturing the thing has a bigger carbon footprint than your
No,
safety.
stop thinking practical. Practical will get you in trouble. You got to just be a DIY, completely unpractical. Can I do it just for the sake of doing it, not because it's practical?
Well, that's why I'm
Just-
playing around with this Python stuff, just because, you know, there's not enough activity on the social networks to keep me focused. And I wanted to do something while I'm sitting here doing nothing.
Yeah, what is going on Facebook these days? I'm not on it, so I have no idea.
Not much. I mean, the amount of traffic has been dwindling, slowly dwindling over a long period of time, actually. And so most people that I had usually communicated with multiple times a day, it might be just multiple times a week now, and much less traffic. And I don't know where people are in terms of, you know, who they're engaged with, where and how. But among other things, you know, Facebook and LinkedIn are diminishing the amount of traffic. That's why I'm playing around with other stuff.
Yeah.
That just to figure out what can I do that at my age is realistic, worthwhile, you know.
Well, you could move to other social networks. I know a lot of people are on the Discord and Telegram and other places like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought about Mastodon, but the thing is I don't even use Twitter. So why would I go to Mastodon if I've not even been using Twitter? I have a Twitter account, just don't use it. So why do I need Mastodon?
Have you got on Discord? Are there any? I wonder how many.
The only thing on
people have-
Discord is that there's a group of us who game D&D gaming every week, and we ended up, after like 3 or 4 different video systems, we ended up on Discord. But that particular game that they do on Discord, I stopped playing that game because it was dull and boring. It was just nothing but stupid melee battles all the time. And
Have you seen if any other networks that were on Facebook have moved over to Discord?
the only one that I know about, which I don't think even was on Facebook, there's a whole community of people who are into Sudoku, and not classical Sudoku, but this embellished Sudoku, and they're on Discord, and they're also on YouTube, they're on Discord, and they're on Patreon and Twitter, and you know they have they have presence on all these channels. But I just watch them every day on YouTube.
Oh, I was watching a short video on that guy you talked about, Raymond Smulyan. I think is how Smulyan. And I saw there was in the video there was at least 20 books he had written. I'm wondering if there's a big community around his work and the books that he's written. I didn't really look too deep into it, but I would ask you if you know of a community.
Well, of course, he died like 5 years ago, I think now. Or I actually met him once, but I mean, he wrote a whole lot of puzzle books.
Yeah, a lot.
He was Omni Magazine, and so he was generating these logic puzzles, which he also taught logic. That was the thing he taught, and also combinatory logic and some other esoteric branches of applied mathematics. But I don't know that there was any community, an active community that I stumbled onto with respect to his stuff, and probably less so now since he's been dead for probably 5 or 6 years now, I think.
You don't know of anyone that's taken up his teachings or logic or?
Well, I mean, I know that you can probably find courses on combinatory logic in some math departments, but whether there's any community outside of, you know, people who sign up for a given course, that I don't know.
Yeah.
And combinatory logic is really kind of esoteric branch of mathematics. The funny thing is these guys who do Sudoku are actually using combinatorial logic, but not formally. They're using it here kind of informally. And they don't know that they're using a kind of logic that actually has a mathematical formalism that you could turn to. And I mentioned it once or twice in comments, but I wasn't expecting anybody to say, oh yeah, I should look at combinatorial logic and see if there's actually a formal. It's like, because they also do the same with algebra. Some of the problems are algebraic and they kind of do the algebra loosey-goosey. And they even mention that it's algebraic, but they don't actually sit down and do, algebra the way you would do formal algebra. They just, kind of juggle it in their head. Narrative algebra. I call it narrative algebra.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there could be a community around that. I think if it's not thriving, if it's only 5 people, that's still a community.
Yeah,
but there could be.
And there very well could be, but it's really hard to find tiny communities if they're, one person in India and one person in Germany and one person in, I don't know, Japan. You'd be hard pressed to find.
Hey, we got a little community here. We got one person in India, one person in Seattle, another in Massachusetts, one in California.
Yeah, well, it started out much bigger. I mean, look how it's dwindled. Look how the GCC community has dwindled. I mean, I joined it, what, 3 years ago, I think, mainly because of Stacy. Now Stacy's not even here. So she
no, she's still here. She's just not here today, but
no, she hasn't. Well,
she was here last week.
Was she here last week? Maybe,
for a hot second.
Right. So this community is basically down to like 3 or 4 of us who show up regularly, and like used to be, you'd see, dozen people on. Huh?
Well, I mean, that was by design.
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff is dwindling, and it's hard to know why some community technology or whatever dwindles, but they do.
Yeah.
It's like pub crawling,
I don't know. I think it's easy to see. I don't think it's hard.
You can see, you can detect that it's dwindling. You may not know exactly why.
Well, because there's no energy put to make it grow. You just don't, if you're not watering it, it's gonna wilt.
Yeah, the enthusiasm wanes, the rate of learning wanes. The joy, the thrill, the joy, the enthusiasm, it all wanes, and pretty soon it becomes oh hum, nothing new. You just meet to say hello, how are you? Nice to see you again. And the things that are thriving are things where there's a lot of learning going on.
Yep.
And if the rate of, and the learning always just sort of, it's steep at the beginning and then it levels off, and pretty soon it saturates and then it becomes boring.
Well, I think that's kind of where we're moving, is you got to just decide what you want to keep learning and just continue on that path. Otherwise it will just dwindle. And
that's where at my age, I'm sort of running out of frontiers where it would make sense, because the amount of time it would take to get anywhere on it is longer than my remaining expected lifetime. So it's harder and harder to find things to get engaged in as you get older.
Yeah.
Because you have some experience of how long does it take to get any good at anything, and what can you reasonably get good at in the amount of time and energy? Because it's not just time, it's also energy.
Yeah. Or what keeps your interest? I mean, I got into the drone flying, and that opened up a whole new world for me. I'm still in that world of trying to understand how to take pictures from the sky and how to.
You live in a place where you can. If I try to take a drone here in the condo, with trees and buildings around, it ends up on the roof.
Yeah, but there's plenty of parks in your area. There's got to be parks.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would, but I can't do it. I can't go outside and do it. I'd have to get in the car and go someplace. And then you only have, I don't know, 10 minutes worth of battery or something. Or
no, now you have 30.
Yeah.
You got
So-
30 and you have a drone that's so light that you don't have to register it with the FAA, and it's so cheap you can get it for 200 bucks.
Oh, yeah, and you need one that's heavy enough that it doesn't get blown away in a 2-mile-an-hour wind. Because the
Well,
ones that we're playing.
I go in 30-mile-per-hour winds with these and they're light.
Yeah,
So,
so. Oh, the other thing is that you got to have good distance vision to play with drones. If you can't see the damn thing when it's 50 feet away.
actually, you don't need to see it at all. You just look on the GPS where it is.
Well, maybe so.
I'm just saying that it's pretty fun, Barry, if you ever want to get into it.
I mean, somebody bought one and we passed it around for a couple of months. And finally, the guy gave it to his grandniece or granddaughter or somebody like that. And we haven't seen it since. So,
Okay. But also just programming the flight patterns. That's where I'm at, is how to program the patterns
uh-huh.
so that you can just send it up and it's on a flight path.
Oh,
then-
okay. Yeah.
And then coming back, looking at the picture and going, hey, what was new today? What was, what was the light perturbation? Mostly it's for photography. So just how was the light when I flew it at that time versus later in the day, getting the shadows and, oh, wow, these shadows are really cool off of the trees. And yeah.
So yeah, it is true. As you age, it gets harder and harder to find the next thing to get engaged in.
Sure.
The next new thing. I mean, I lived through. I mean, think about it. From the 1950s, when I was not yet a teenager, till well into the 21st century, there was all this new stuff coming out. Every decade, there was something new. And there was computers, and it was television. There was computers. There was, I don't know, a lot of stuff to.
I think there's still new stuff coming out. It's just when you look at it from your lens of your experience through a lifetime, you go, oh, that's just like the thing I did when 30 years ago. It's not much different. It's just got a new wrapper around it.
I mean, look, we're doing hybrid meetings, so I'm setting up a mini portable TV studio in a satchel.
Uh-huh.
But when I was a teenager, I was doing radio TV as a teenager in college.
Yeah.
So I basically am using things that I learned when I was 20 years old to do hybrid meetings. And in those days, you had to physically go to the TV studio where you had equipment that, weighed tons. And now it's all in a satchel, but I got to set it up and tear it down. I have a portable mini TV studio in a satchel.
Yep.
But can I take the guy next to me and say, now it's your turn, you do it? No, it's just not going to happen. There's just too many arcane details that you got to master. And nobody really feels that, that's worth their time.
Well, from my perspective, you just don't have to do that. But
well, I mean, really, it's kind of, I've sort of come to the conclusion that like the overhead isn't worth. First of all, I have to drive there. So I need to have a car and buy the gas. It's a volunteer job. I won't say it's thankless. It's not a thankless job. It's just that I'm serving 3 people who aren't even watching the screen anyway. Because
I'm just saying, if you had different friends and you were in different places with different people doing different things, it might be a little more interesting. That's all I'm trying to say.
There could be meetings where it would matter. The particular Toastmasters meeting, I don't think it's all that big a deal.
Yeah, I'm saying there's other organizations to join. That's all I'm saying, Barry. Not that you should not keep to your commitments and stick to whatever it is that you said you would do, but I'm just saying sometimes breaking plans is like heroin. It feels so good.
I mean, I could bring all this stuff to the Fix-It shop, set it up and say, the people at home can tune into the Zoom call and watch me fix their thing, but they're not going to do that because it's boring.
I love that idea. I'll tune in. I'll check that out. I'm excited. I would like to see what goes on in that Fix-It shop.
The thing is that here I am, at this distance tinkering with something. You can't really see what I'm doing.
Well, no, you get another camera that shows it anyway. I'm just saying, when you think outside the box, new possibilities open up. If you stay in the box, you're in the box.
But what I could do is that one of the guys who I always give a ride to because he can't drive anymore, he doesn't always come in. I could say, you want to connect on Zoom from home and talk to me while I'm fixing this thing, and you can, well, you know, I can be your hand, I can be your eyes and hands. I might consider doing that with David, who doesn't always come in because he's getting to the point where he can't always make it. But I don't know. I mean,
What do you
maybe I'll
think, Diggy? Is Dig VJ still there? He's a lot younger than both of us. Maybe he knows.
probably boring. We're
something.
probably boring him to tears with this conversation.
What do you think, Diggy? What's worth doing?
Well, I think I can't, specifically point it out like what's worth doing, because everyone has a different, I would say standpoints, perspectives, or experiences, and when people choose paths depending on that.
No, but I'm
And
saying from your
whatever-
paradigm, not from mine or Barry's, just in
I
your
mean-
world.
If you said, yes, we're boring you to tears, I wouldn't be offended because I suspect we are.
I mean, for me, I think learning is the topmost thing that you can do, and I think for that, it's very important for me to being open to new spaces. I think when it's about, if you ask me, I'm always open to learn new things, and that's how I'm wired to.
Yeah.
And for me, that thing is very precious. So
If I knew exactly what your current frontier of learning was, what you were most enthusiastic about learning and putting in some effort, then I might modify what, I provide so that it's more of an overlap with your frontier. I have no idea what your frontier is.
yeah, my frontier is mostly science and technology. So because I was into the pure sciences, I was studying, then I was studying theoretical chemistry since a while, and of course it's very interesting, but where what are the other disciplines where I can apply these things? What are the other applications that I could get my hands on, or what other things that we can develop from these theories or these technologies that I've built so far? So I think that's my major domain. That's how I think, and for me it's worth like every second I spend learning new things and applying what I've already learned. So yeah, for me it's very important.
Okay.
So basically, Barry, I think Dig VJ is saying anything with science and technology.
Yeah.
Well, we have been talking science and technology, but whether it turns out to be something that Dig VJ will end up embracing and employing and utilizing, I mean, that's, you go to school and go, why do I need to learn it? When will I ever use this stuff? And sometimes you do end up using it. A lot of times you don't.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
this is a major. I think this is a very amazing thing that you share right now. That back in high school when we studied all that mathematics, and practically we have never used mathematics complex than the elementary mathematics,
Yeah.
whatever we did. So we were always in a dilemma that where it's going to be used, but we kept on with the flow. And then we understood the art behind the mathematics, that how beautifully it defines relations, how beautifully it defines the true nature. I would say the true nature of everything, how it works, the symphony of the nature. So that's where the conscience kicked in, and then we gravitated towards more abstract things, and that's where the point that's the point where we actually understood the true value of it. But if we always questioning these things as where to apply at the first place without understanding that what it is, we always going to be end up in a space where we are not even understanding it and not even finding a place to apply that information as well. That's what
when I was studying the calculus in high school and college, it never occurred to me that I was going to end up using the calculus to develop a theoretical model of the interplay of emotions and learning.
Yeah.
There was nothing to suggest that there was any even reason to think that that was going to happen.
Yep.
Joshua's got his hand up.
I'm just curious, did you develop that because you knew the calculus? That was your best model to describe it of knowledge? Or was it because it was the best fit for what was needed to describe it?
Well, I got to the point where I was really bewildered by emotions in one of my correspondence. And when I finally observed an episode of learning, this person was learning disabled, big time learning disabled. I observed an episode of learning that I midwife with the Socratic method. And as a consequence, I got a very strong positive emotional reaction, which is the first time I'd seen a positive emotion. And so I knew that the breakthrough in learning causes this change in emotional state. And it never occurred to me before that time to even reflect on the connection between emotions and learning. So that was the observation that says learning and emotions are connected in a way that I never really thought about before. Then I said, how can I understand the relationship? How do I, and of course, Sam will tell you, mathematics is the language of relationships.
Right.
So initially you simply draw, curve fits and correlations. So as I began to think about it, at some point, it occurred to me that I should use the analogy of motion. You go on a journey, you have speed and acceleration in your journey. You go on a learning journey, you have rate of learning, which is speed, but you also have the second derivative. And I go, holy shamoly, that's just ordinary calculus of motion. I can use the same analogy. So once I had the analogy that the curvature of the learning curve is emotions, then I just sort of kind of worked out the details. But it kind of fell upon me partly because I had the knowledge of calculus as to how you would model a journey. Time, distance, velocity. So if I didn't know the calculus, I never would occur to me to employ it to come up. So that was the analogy that ended up working.
Yeah.
I have to apologize. I just saw the time. I've got to go drive down to LA.
Okay.
I got
That's
to
a long
get
drive
packed
for
up.
you.
It's an hour and a half.
Well, you're not as far north as I thought you were.
No, I'm not far at all. It's just
Okay.
an hour up the freeway.
I didn't realize you were that far south. Okay.
Yeah, but I will see you guys. Hopefully I'll be on tomorrow. I don't know with Christmas Day, so we'll see.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Sam else again, I think, has a conflict that is going to limit his time.
Yeah.
So if he's on for half an hour, that's good for Sam.
Well, if not, I think I'll see you before the New Year's. I think the next one is before New Year's.
That's right. Next Saturday is New Year's Eve day.
I think that's right.
Yeah. New Year's Day and Christmas Day are the same day of the week every year.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I catch you before next year. I just like saying that. That's always fun at the end of the year. Good to
Take
see you,
care.
Dick VJ.
Drive safe.
We have to catch up on Clubhouse sometime. I'll try to.
Exactly.
Look forward to
Exactly. We will.
All right.
Yeah,
Cheers.
Take care. Take care.
Anything you want to talk about before we close the session today?
Yeah. So I and Ankur were discussing about this learning model that you have, and we were I especially want to double down on it because I find it very, very interesting. So I'll keep you updated with what I'm reading right now or what I'm up to, because
So make sure that from the chat, the Zoom chat, that you get that link to the video.
Yeah.
You don't lose
shared
it before the end of the session.
Ankur. Yeah,
And
I shared it with Ankur as well, and he was talking about that that we will work on small bits and pieces along along the time, and we will definitely write something on it as well, a research paper or something.
Yeah, write something up, even if it's just a commentary or a narrative. Write something up in your own language. I mean, in your own way of presenting, and share it with your friends, and see if you can, see if there are other people who want to pick it up and run with it. Because you won't find it in the
Yeah.
literature, except in my own literature. You won't find that stuff in the published literature, except the handful of peer-reviewed papers that we published 20 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. So, Ankur is very interested in it as well. That, I approached him for this thing that, okay, we will try to bring something up in this space as well. Because, we've been polymaths like since a while now, and we just love to relate stuff. And I think this was something that, okay, we felt it like, okay, this is something which is very, very important for the, for the age of information, that how learning models have to be rectified, before before we step into the new models, new modes of transportation, or new modes of consuming content. Because today, I think human attention is a scarce commodity.
It is. It's very scarce.
Yeah,
Very
it's a scarce commodity, and people really underestimate it. And when you become more efficient with your time and your work, you actually understand the true value that you're putting into the space just for free. You're just watching, you're just scrolling Instagram, or watching reels all day. So I think those things have to be, those things are enough evidence that, okay, we must take on this amazing literature, and we try to bring something on table as well. Even I want to write something on it as well, because it seems very promising for the future.
Yeah. Keep track of any questions or issues that between you and your correspondence that you find confusing or you don't understand. So make a collection of anything that doesn't seem to come clear.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm thinking of devoting for next 2 years on it, because I want to dive really deep into it. This thing actually captured my imagination. I was talking to Joshua about it without knowing that you have done work on in this field, and it happened so, I would say, luckily that it happened. And I was talking to Joshua about it, like, okay, I think this way, that learning models must include these parameters as well. And then he came up with this, that Barry has already done work in this field.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, this is
So-
amazing. So
So if more people like Joshua knew of the existence of this work and could, like he did, share it with their next level correspondence, because at some point, if it's either going to vanish into the ether or it's going to catch on, and obviously I would rather have it catch on than to disappear into the background noise.
Yeah. So we are just I and Ankur will try to write a paper on it as well.
There you go.
Bring something onto the table as well, that let's do an extensive research on it as well, because I'm very positive about it, very confident about it as well. So I'm fully into it for next 2 years.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, in 2 years, I'll be 80 years old. So keep that in mind.
So that's how we are really excited about it, actually.
Good.
We were taking this as a small project of our own,
Yeah.
because I tell him that you must take some time out of your life as well. I'll try to make some spaces, and we'll discuss these things, because I'm working with my friend right now in his startup, and yes, we find very little time for such thing, but I somehow manage every weekend, because I'm not much into clubbing and parties. So I actually find it very interesting to sit with you guys and discuss something, and which actually have some value. Sometimes you don't read new pieces. This happens a lot, that you don't have time to read a lot. So but I think the topics that you guys bring on the table are so diverse, and somehow they're connected to each other, that okay, the stimulus that I need from reading new content, I think I get enough from this space.
Good.
And this is amazing that we are living in a very interesting time, that you're sitting in Massachusetts and I'm in India, and having some sort of connection, which is very amazing. So yeah, I will try my best to bring something new onto your study as well. I
Excellent.
will definitely write a paper on that.
I'm looking forward to whatever you guys come up with.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
Well, I also started studying systems engineering, and yeah, I'm taking a there's an open courseware course on MIT. It's called the
Oh.
systems engineering course,
very good.
and they are talking about the requirements and how we segregate the requirements and how we, uh, what we say, how we hierarchically tone down requirements, and that's the first lecture they had on.
I hope you get something out of that.
Yeah, I think it's very important because it grooms your management skills a lot, I think.
Yep.
Because I never thought it that way. I thought, okay, we require these things, 7 to 8 things, we write it down, we just that's the whole notion of requirements. But they taught about requirements, that how we identify requirements, how we update them as well with time, because there are things that you always going to miss when you're creating something, and this happens a lot actually. So it's gonna personally help me a lot as well.
Yeah, it's really important. You come to a point where you need a crucial resource and you don't have it, you're stuck.
Yeah, exactly. And you just cannot predefine each and everything. You just can't choreograph each and everything when you're creating something new.
Yep.
So
Trial and
you
error.
have to keep that space, those margins of error. So yeah, I think this is very important and enlightening thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Make sure that I've saved the chat, and then we'll. Oh, will you be on tomorrow?
Yeah, I will definitely join you guys.
Okay, so I'll see you guys tomorrow. See you tomorrow then.
Yeah. I have to travel to my hometown, and I hope it happens tomorrow. So I'll join you guys on time.
Okay, all righty.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and I guess I can't end the meeting, but because I don't have the authority, but I think we're basically done.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Bye-bye. Be well.
Bye-bye. Yep.